be willing to talk to people and get out of your own head and get out of your own way and ask those questions. And, you're going to mess up, you're going to screw up, you're going to feel like you don't belong there.
And that's okay.
That's the way that you learn and grow. Otherwise, you're stuck and you'll keep doing what you do.
Before we get started, thank you so much to our sponsor, Limbach. They excel in critical MEP systems, ensuring operational efficiency. Their expert team delivers reliable, customized solutions for mission-critical facilities, providing clients peace of mind. Now, let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to the Build Your Path podcast. I'm your host, Emma Shirey, and today I am with Susan Young of AEC Amplify. Today, I'm with Susan Young of AEC Amplify. So Susan, please introduce yourself, explain AEC Amplify, what you do, and how you got there.
Okay, so to me, everything's a story. First of all, thanks for having me and inviting me onto the podcast. I didn't talk till I was 4 years old. And so I lived in Brooklyn. I was born in Brooklyn in New York at the time. So, 4 years old, didn't talk. My parents thought I was deaf. They took me to the doctor, and the doctor said, no, she's fine. She just doesn't need to talk. She's healthy. He said, well, what does she do when she's like hungry? And they said, well, she bangs on the refrigerator door. I said, well, she doesn't need to talk. And so what does a child like this do? I grew up to major in mass communication in college, and found like the first week the campus radio station and was totally hooked. I was always a good writer and interested in the media and news, so it was just a natural fit. So I used to DJ and I got involved with the news. And when I graduated, I went back to New Jersey where I grew up and worked for 10 years as a radio news anchor and a reporter, interviewing everyone from homeless people to presidents. Won a bunch of awards along the way, and learned about storytelling and using your voice and being creative and watching people, being life's little observer. So I was on the radio every day for 10 years. And what I found out was, as an old school style trained journalist back in the 1980s, my opinion didn't matter. There was no social, there was no CNN or 24/7 news. So all I had to do is I got paid to ask good questions, and I asked other people's opinions. So I was telling other people's stories, but I never really felt, I never really knew how I felt about anything, because my opinion, I was told by the news directors, didn't matter. So I kind of took that to heart in a way that transformed my life and set me on a deep internal journey. So I work in news. I ran the governor's office of radio and TV in Trenton, New Jersey for Governor Christie Whitman, and was a PR director for a statewide nonprofit. Now, having said that, I sat through hundreds of presentations from engineers and architects and community people about groundwater tables and runoff and protests and building and environmental engineering. And most of them were painful. Some were persuasive, but I learned that I could help them to distill complex information and tell a good story, because that's what I did. It was 6 sentences and the soundbite, and you're in, you're out. So how do you get and keep people's attention, which is especially important these days? So for 23 years, I started my company back in 2000, and I'm a communications trainer and speaker for emerging leaders and associations in AEC, in architecture, engineering, and construction. And along the way, I had to reinvent myself, tell my own story, go on that deep journey and discover what I felt and what my core values were. And that's been the way. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I love it. I think it's, and obviously we're called Build Your Path, but I've been thinking a lot about careers recently and how it's really more of a portfolio, right? You learn a little from this, you learn a little from this, and then it becomes something else. So tell me a little bit about what you have found when you can take that more analytical, more like STEM based, right? The drafts, the math of it all, and then make it more accessible to viewers or readers. How does that work?
Yeah, it's interesting because the engineers, the AEC, the STEM based people are more left-brained thinkers, the math and analytical and science and all that. And so I'm more right-brained. And so it's more, creative and emotional, which I didn't realize at the time because I didn't even know what an emotion was because I didn't know how I felt about anything. So that was, again, part of that journey. So the key is really don't bury the lead, which means in news is what is the most important piece of information that your audience has to know. If they walk away and they only hear one sentence, what is it?
Right.
So you want to make sure that you're not putting the most important piece of information 5 minutes into your presentation or into your conversation, but you're leading with it. It's the opening. It's going to grab their attention and it's going to keep their attention. I think that's the key, is knowing what to include and what to leave out.
And so you think that what do you help companies with now? Is that sales? How does that work?
Yeah, it's absolutely business development, sales, networking, how to introduce yourself, how to do BD presentations and sales presentations, how to go to networking meetings, and not just tell people, some canned template or I'll just wing it, my introduction or my story, but exactly, the right words in the right order at the right time for the right people.
So for someone who doesn't really know how the construction industry or the architecture industry works, why does business matter, right? They're just building something. Why do they have to sell something?
Because they want to get a paycheck.
Right.
Because they want to see growth and they want to be contributing to the growth of something that they love doing. And what happens these days now in the AEC industry is that we have sellers and doers. The sellers are the marketing people who like to schmooze and are friendly and, are good at closing business, and they're sales professionals. And then the prospects who are investing in $20 million football stadiums or libraries or schools or whatever they're building, infrastructure, they want to meet when there's a shortlisted meeting. They get maybe 15 applicants. They cut it down to, okay, here are the 3 companies we want to meet with. So that's a shortlisted interview. And then the sellers go in there, the marketing people, the salespeople, and the prospects now want to meet the doers. Who are the people who are actually working on the job site? The construction superintendents, the program and project managers, the schedulers, the estimators. And they're the ones who wear the hard hats, who do not feel comfortable talking about themselves, who don't know how to sell, who don't want to be in a conference room with people in formal suits and ties and all that. And so they don't know what to include and what to leave out because they're very proficient at what they do technology wise, but they know how to build a room. They don't know how to read the room.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the sellers bring them into, kicking and screaming into these business meetings, they tend to go off the rails because they miss the social cues and the people skills. And so that's what I teach, is how to read body language, how to share the most important information, how not to pack those PowerPoint slides, how to be yourself and communicate in a way that's curious, with deep listening skills, that's going to differentiate you and your firm so that you can contribute to the bottom line. You can grow more business, close more deals.
Right. Have you always known that you were really good at this? Like when you were young and you went to school, how did you was it the reporting group that you were in or the journalism group, or what really brought that out? How did you know?
Well, the journalism part I knew. I think I knew from the time I was 12 years old that I wanted to be in the media, and I was always very, very insatiable curiosity since the time I was a kid. I have 2 sisters, and they would both get their report cards that said, talks too much in class. Mine was roams around the building, because I was always looking for other things. I'm like, there's something more interesting at Woodbrook Elementary School than Mrs. Rosenthal's 3rd grade science class. I've got to find it. Like, it was like an adventure. And they didn't like that. They wanted you in your seat listening to the science lesson. So I was always curious, always asked a lot of questions, always interested, grew up, family talked about the news and watch the news and things like that, current events kind of thing. The selling part, I had no interest in it. I mean, I had to literally reinvent myself. And that's what a lot of folks, that's what I teach, is that it's okay to reinvent yourself. Because when people would say to me, like when I worked in radio, oh, you'd be good in sales. And I'm like, that's not for me. I'd rather, there's no way. I'm not interested in the least. And then, of course, everything I swore I'd never do, I've done. So I wind up now, starting my business, knowing 23 years ago, okay, I need to learn how to sell. But it's really not selling the way that I look at it. It's really the perspective of educating people so that they can make the right decision for their firm, whether they buy from me or not. It's helping them to understand. So it's going into it with the mindset of an easy conversation. It's
Right.
not a, when are we going to close the deal? Where's the contract? Here, sign here. But it's just the curiosity, planting the seeds, again, sharing the right information with the right people, having that subtle, confident humility that you grow into and that anyone can have, but we actually talk ourselves out of it. It's the internal storytelling. I'm reserved. I'm shy. I'm not good at sales. I'm an empath. I'm an introvert, whatever it is. And we start to believe that. And I started to believe that my story didn't matter. I started to believe that I didn't know what I stood for, that my opinion wasn't important. I'm not good at sales. And then I learned that when I started my business, I needed to go out and talk with people and become, a schmoozer, to be able to talk about who I am and what I do. And people needed and wanted my services because I started as a public relations company. And people were very puzzled, and I think they still are at some level, but it was about, how do I get in the news? How do I get, print, radio, television reporter interested in my story because it brings credibility. So they knew that I was on the other side in the trenches for 10 years as a reporter. So it's like, well, what makes this newsworthy? What makes this important? And it still carries over, to connect the dots for you here, it still carries over to emerging leaders today in the STEM field, because it's what makes this valuable. And so when you can notice the nuances and how you can stand out in a very busy, noisy world, that's where the magic is.
Right. Why is the AEC industry so magical for PR marketing professionals? Why is that somewhere where, because you built your whole business off of AEC.
Right. Well, I've worked with a lot of other, companies and industries and sectors. And I started, I had a lot of clients in AEC, and now it's my total focus. It's because they know that they're missing the communication skills. They have the proficiency in technology with the drones, with BIM, with LEED, with sustainability and green and all that. But again, they know how to build the room. They don't know how to read the room. And it's the communication skills, the human to human, that's holding them back. And the firms know it. And the emerging leaders know it, because a lot of it came post-COVID, is that, they don't use their voices and pick up the phone. Their communication is based on chat and text and TikTok and images. And we need to go back to that timeless storytelling. That's not going out of style anytime soon. It's 2,000 years old. They were telling stories on hieroglyphics and cave walls, and then the fireside chats with President Roosevelt in, World War II on the radio. And so now we tell stories just differently on social media. But storytelling is not going out of style anytime soon. And that's where I come in, is to teach you how to be. You can't go into the marketplace and network effectively and know who your target audience is and feel confident in introducing yourself, even if you don't believe first the story in your head. And if you're listening to that limiting belief and that self-doubt and that negative self-talk, you're never going to be able to be an effective communicator or marketer and talk about your own expertise to help build your career, your business, if you're doubting yourself.
Right. So pretty much everyone, right, and that's your whole job and everyone has to sell something. They either have to sell being the best person for the job, the best company for the job, the best talent. or they're selling the product itself, right? So that is something that I think a lot of people know, but that's not something that everyone is actively thinking about. And I think you're right, it makes the AC industry so special for creatives, word people. I'm one of those word people, right? Folks who are really thinking about how to communicate and how to get the job done in that way. So I think that's really, really awesome. And I'm glad that you have this company that does focus specifically on AEC. And I'm really grateful that you're here with us today, because I do think many creatives, right, when they're in college and they're thinking about, okay, well, I love to write, they're never connecting the dots to an industry like architecture, engineering, construction. There's a really big gap there. But there are so many roles to fill and so many things to do. And as you said, it's starting to bud right after COVID. So now is the time, if you're in college now or you're thinking of going to school for something, but you're not sure, you like construction engineering, but you're not really sure if that's what you want to be, right? You don't want to be an engineer. Maybe this is the path. So what sort of things should students look out for in their day-to-day life, the things that they're interested in? You said like exploring kind of that more reporting aspect. What kind of things should students look out for?
Yeah, they don't have to be reporters. They don't have to be great writers. The key here is that they know how to be curious and ask good questions, because when you ask quality questions, you get quality information. And so even if it's a job interview or an application for an internship, if you ask good questions and you use deep listening skills, this is beyond active listening, like repeating somebody's name, or, it's about being present in the conversation in the moment and not having those distractions that pull you away from a conversation where you miss things, so that you become a critical thinker and you become creative. And as I mentioned, you notice the nuances that other people miss. And that's when you become invaluable. That's when you become really, priceless, and people will respect that, even if you don't have experience. And they know that because you're coming out of school, and they know most schools don't teach at this level of communication, that they have to learn it. And so when you are curious, you're being hired really for your potential. And when you can showcase your potential at that level, you'll shine. One of the examples that I like to share is about my son, which we had talked about
We did.
before
I'm
we
so excited.
started. Okay, so we have two kids. Our daughter's just got married. She's 30, and our son is 28. So Danny, when he was in high school, and I've been on LinkedIn since like 2008 or so. So Danny's in high school, and he says to me, he's really into sports and ice hockey. He says, I want to have a LinkedIn account. I'm like, he's like 14, 15 years old. I'm like, why? He goes, I think I want to, meet some people about, because he wanted to get into like I knew what I wanted to do from the time I was 12 years old. He knew what he wanted to do. He got into sports. So I explained LinkedIn to him, how it works, and it's a business network. And he says, well, what could I do since I'm in high school? But I want to major in sports management when I go to college. Okay. So I said, people like to talk about themselves. So as a young man, connect with people who are in the field that you want to be in sports management or athletics, or, general managers, marketing directors of professional teams and college teams. So he starts to do this, and he says, I want to interview you. So I kind of planted that reporter seed.
Yeah.
He says, I'm, 16 years old. I'm thinking about college, what I want to major in. I want to major in sports management. Would you be willing to talk with me on the phone for 5 minutes so I could ask you some questions and get some wisdom? Just, what's the best path? What should I do? What shouldn't I do? Lesson learned kind of thing. So he does this, and, it just kind of goes on the side. He's busy doing this. I have no idea how it's exploding. And one day I pick him up from school, and he says, Mom, I got to hurry up. I've got an interview on the phone with, it was like the manager of the general manager of the Houston Rockets basketball team. I'm like, what? he goes, oh yeah, I've been talking to blah, 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 the New Jersey Devils and the hockey team and the athletic manager at Princeton. I'm like, and he's on the phone taking notes, scribbling stuff down. And I'm sitting there with my mouth hanging open. I'm like, Danny, he had a better LinkedIn and engaging network before he went to college than most adults have now. Right. It was incredible. And he's just amazing. It's just, really, it was really neat to watch.
And that helped him with he was able to ask questions, learn about, right? Because we're talking about that, building your path. Even if he never went into management, which did he?
Actually, here's another story. He got his undergraduate in New Hampshire in sports management, got his master's degree in business, and then said he wanted to go to law school. And we were like, he never liked to read. I mean, he was reading Dr. Seuss like in 8th grade. We were like, Danny, what do you, he's an attorney. He passed the bar on the first time, and he's been an attorney for about 1.5 years.
That's awesome.
But he wants to go back into, sports management, be a counsel or an attorney for a team, for an athletic team.
Well, and I think that's that goes with what we were saying about this whole podcast for me is about is the path that you build, asking questions at 16, 18, 25, whatever questions you're asking, you don't have to be asking the person you want to be. You can just be asking, you don't want to take their job, but maybe you're learning a little bit more about yourself, a little bit more of what your potential is, right? He learned probably so much more about listening and learning from folks who have succeeded than he would have learned even in school, right? So there's some about himself. And I think that that's really special. And so a big takeaway that I want all of our students to hear is to ask questions, reach out to the people that you're a little scared of. And maybe you'll learn something about selling yourself and selling your personal, I guess it's personal brand in a way, wouldn't you say?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it's really about having the ability to, write down the questions in advance, but also to be willing to not just go by the bullet points. And you and I talked about this. It's like, do you have an outline or what do you want to talk about? And it's like, I love winging it because that's when the neat, fun stuff comes up. When we stick to a template and say, okay, here's question 4, here's question 5. And then you miss things because of that deep listening. But if I say something interesting to you, like, notice the nuances from the reporter days, and you say, wow, what was that about? It takes the conversation down such a natural, easy path that unfolds, that makes it interesting instead of listening to some dry, rote questions and talking points that we planned out. And it's like, wow, that would have been really cool if she talked about that trip to the Amazon and the waterfalls and doing yoga with the locals. But I wasn't paying attention because I was stuck on my notes.
Right.
Totally different conversation.
I think so. And I think what the whole thing is bringing humanity to the STEM world. And that's the whole reason why it's so effective, right? Is because that doesn't really exist. It does, but it doesn't, right? Like a robot could do a lot of the work and it could probably design something like AI, right? It's designing these random things, but it's losing all of the intricacies because it follows the bullet points directly. So that is such a cool thing that folks who maybe are more right-brained can really start to bring to and continue to bring to the table for the AEC industry.
I call it H2H, human to human.
Yeah.
We need to connect as human beings and know how to build those relationships, coming full circle now, at networking events, and be willing to talk to people and get out of your own head and get out of your own way and ask those questions. And, you're going to mess up, you're going to screw up, you're going to feel like you don't belong there.
And that's okay.
That's the way that you learn and grow. Otherwise you're stuck and you'll keep doing what you do. And, I don't think, mediocrity is not for everybody. And I don't think the people listening to this are sleepwalking through life. I think they want to really shine and step away from mediocrity.
Do you have any tips on networking events? Because I know a lot of colleges and different programs often have like a networking event, maybe a career meetup. And so that's one first impression. How would you say folks should enter those fairs or meetings?
Um, Probably, and I'm just going to preface this with I
Yeah.
come from a family of teachers. Um, Ignore everything that they taught you in school. Um, they're in their seclusion. It's different in business. I'll put it that way. You want to have a formula for the one-line introduction so that it's easy and it's simple, and you flip the questions. It's not about you, but it's about them, about results. But when you go to a networking event, go when you're in a good mood. Maybe if you're starting out and you're embarrassed or you're shy or you're worried, go to a place where you'll never see anybody again, like another town or something, where it doesn't really matter, and practice your introduction. Don't wing it, don't ramble. Know who is going to be in that room, and get there early, hang out by the door, sit with people you don't know, so that you're forced. You might have to force yourself to make small talk and to smile and to use the right body language. Identify 2 or 3 people who are going to be there, like maybe the speaker or the organizing person, the contact person from the event, of who you want to meet, and connect with them. So those are a few tips to get started with.
I love that. What would you, because we talked about don't bury the lead, right? So you need a pitch, a sort of first thing to say to someone. What's the formula for that?
Well, it's one line. You have a 30-second elevator pitch, which is, here's mine.
Yes.
I work with AEC emerging leaders who want more confident communication so that they have more visibility, trust, and career growth.
So let's break that down because I love it. So this is who I am. This is
It's not who I am.
It's who you work with.
It's who I work with. So it's my ideal client.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're a nonprofit leader and they say, what's AEC? They're not my people.
Right.
Okay. So I qualify them. I work with engineering professionals, emerging leaders who want more. What do they want that I teach, that I have, that my expertise is? What do they want? They want to be confident communicators. And that connects the dots so that they have more visibility, trust, and career growth. What are the outcomes, the 3 outcomes that people want that I get for them? What are the results? What are the people who send me recommendations or thank you notes or emails or do video testimonials on my website? What do they say about me? I don't make up the words, because what I've learned here is another gem. Guessing in business is very, very expensive. Do the market research. And that's what this is all based on. And it's like this one-liner, which I just gave away, which, work with people on that, is scientifically and psychologically proven. And I've been using it for 23 years, so I know it works.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for our little tip. If you are interested in working with Susan, if you are a professional with a company and all of that, interested in working with Susan, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, we do group coaching called Amplify. So firms can assemble a group of employees and emerging leaders. It's called Amplify, and the website is aecamplify.com. There's also a free download if you want 99 communication tips. So it's one-liners. It's not a whole bunch of stuff. It's just one-liners on public speaking, introductions, presentations, confidence, body language, all of that. So that's easy. Just download it off the website. Again, it's aecamplify.com.
So if you're an emerging professional, a young person interested in interviewing and all of that, that's probably a great download for them too. Fabulous. Well, thank you so much, Susan. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. All righty, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next month.